It'd be really boring otherwise. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on the whole swearing thing, right? Because you have some people who are so poo poo on it, but them public facing versus them in a private room, they're two totally different humans, right? Because I know plenty of people who look down on you and they kind of Game of Thrones you if you like swear in public, right? It's like shame, shame, shame. But then you put them in a back room and there's no one else around and there are no cameras and they're just like motherfuck this and shit that and all this other stuff. I'm like, kind of fake, dude.
Oh no, 100%. I think it's even like that's my whole thing now. I look at it with like just people on social media, and I see them in real life. Like we've got yeah, you just see it a bit more, and it's like, man, I know you're not like that in person. I'd rather someone be consistently a dickhead on Instagram and in person than be a dickhead in real life and then this absolute saint on Instagram. Just be consistent. That's my whole thing.
Yeah, dude, without question.
Yeah.
And just be the same person throughout. It just makes things so much easier. But all right, you're gonna have to pronounce your last name for me, dude, because I still can't get it for the life of me. So we are sitting down with Jamie. I just call you like Jamie Booz is usually what I call you for short. So how does the last name actually go?
That's what everyone calls me, but it's the last name is Bouziotis. Bouziotis. It's
Bouziotis. Okay.
It's fairly phonetic. Like everyone looks at it and they get scared and then they just butcher it. But it's Bouziotis.
It's pretty literal. It's pretty much exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Like in Greek, it's pronounced slightly different, but we're not speaking Greek, so we're all good.
Nice, dude. And so we wanted to sit down and just chat some training things today because I think you have a really good, I think, story around training and finding purpose in training again that a lot of people listening to this will be able to relate to. For whatever reason it is, I think that maybe it's just like anytime you have the turn of a new year and people are reflecting on things. It's March now, but throughout January and February, I just had a lot of conversations with people, and the thing I kept hearing over and over again is, yeah, dude, like I've been training, but I'm really just kind of going through the motions. It doesn't really feel like there's any purpose to what I'm doing. I'm not really having fun in the gym anymore. And I know you've been on board with us now for, Christ, we're probably going up on 2 years, pretty close. Something like that. We worked together for a while when you were interested more in kind of like a hybrid outcome. And then now you're with Ryan the Cure, just getting jacked and swole and strong as fuck. But yeah, dude, so I would love to chat about kind of where you were at with your training prior to coming on board at Rebel.
Yeah. So I guess like it probably starts with my like athletic history. Like I used to box, I used to do Muay Thai, and then obviously what comes along with those sports, there's some pretty traumatic injuries depending on who you are, and mine were pretty busted, and they were I guess career-ending injuries. Like as many times I tried to come back, it just didn't happen. And then after that, I just found it wasn't the same. Like training wasn't the same if it was just for bodybuilding or just for strength. That's what I found. Like after you come from the chaos of fighting, lifting just isn't the same for a bit, especially if it's like, oh, well, if I just train in 20 years, I'll have a great body. You know what I mean? Like, whereas when you're half decent at fighting, you get to fight and you get almost like an instant, I guess, return, really, whether it's, you have a great experience or you get the shit kicked out of you. Either way, it's good fun. But what I found was after that, I started just spinning my wheels with training. I was finishing my undergrad in exercise and sports science, and I was working with athletes, which is where I sort of got my fix of sports performance, but it just didn't make sense to me training-wise to train as them. I'm like, I'm just doing whatever, and I wasn't doing my own. I was doing my own programming, and as you're a fresh sort of exercise and sports science graduate, you try everything, you do everything, and you sort of get nowhere. Especially if you've got no coach, it's just you read this new thing, and then the program's completely changed within a week. And I just sort of went nowhere with training for a little bit. It was half between, well, it's not fighting and it's half training, so whatever. So I just spun my wheels, did nothing for a little while. Got a coach, was probably better for enhanced athletes at the time. I just wasn't smart enough in terms of personal responsibility and load management standpoint. Again, just hurting myself, especially after what I'd put my body through after 15 years of fighting. It just wasn't the way to train for me. And saying that, some people would respond really well, but for me and where I was at in my, I guess, athletic and lifting career, it just wasn't suited to me. Then from there, I think again I just spun my wheels for a bit because I was hurt, and then I started seeing more of this sort of like hybrid focus stuff. It was Alex Viada to start. He was probably the first influence. I'm like, oh well, I really like the conditioning aspect of boxing and running and doing things like that, and the I guess the experience of feeling fit, aerobically fit. There's just something about it to me. And, it was either, do I go to the full, because I know he's very like marathon, triathlon, like hard triathlon and stuff like that, and balancing that with hard out powerlifting. And that did appeal to me, but at the same time, I was looking more at, the old Rebel Performance blogs, seeing who you would have on there, Pat D, Michelle Boland, and we were very, almost like when we started, was very PRI influenced as well, understanding position and influence and movement, and how that affects leg tension relationships, and just overall, I guess, improved sensation in a movement without the accompanying effects of just feeling beat up all the time. And we're like, well, it works for our clients. I like that influence in my lifting, but then also people that understand conditioning and power development, and plyometric development, and it seemed like a good fit to go with you. And that's when I started with Rebel Performance, and I think that's really where I started. I had a couple coaches in the past, but I really found I don't know, you guys, between you and I'm coached by Ryan as well now, there was ways of finding short-term purpose in that long-term process. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I feel like in training, and especially in the era of like Instagram influencers and then people just reading a couple of books, everyone's like, it's the process, trust the process, and the outcome will happen. They're like, man, fucking fitness is a long-term pursuit, and I don't know if I can just think about what's going to happen in 20 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as much as that's sweet, and I can really respect that sentiment. Like, fuck that, man. Like, short term, like I don't know, humans like not delayed gratification. Like, yeah, that feels good, but we need instant gratification as well. And by instant, nailing the short term goal in 4 weeks and 6 weeks, and that will drive the long term outcome. And I think you guys understood that really well, and that helped a lot for me. And the goal setting process, everything, how everyone is now, fuck goals or whatever. Like, no, man, they help. And I just found that really helped with me. I found short-term purpose within my training is sort of mini goals that sort of just like every time I would knock one down, it would lead me towards this bigger goal, whether it was more of that, that hybrid sort of athlete, or whether it's now, where I'm trying to get as jacked and as juicy as possible. Like that's where I'm at now, and I found you guys did that well.
Nice, man. Awesome, dude. Yeah, I think there are a couple of things there that are really important to point out. I think one, and this is something I don't think a lot of people understand unless they're really in the game, right? Because you're a strength coach yourself, so you kind of understand this thing and the whole enhanced athlete aspect. So, like, there are some really good coaches out there, but you got to remember that most of what they're coaching are enhanced athletes. And so when we say enhanced, it means we're bringing pharmaceuticals, testosterone, insulin, other things to the table. And a lot of times their programming kind of relies and needs that pharmacological aid because of the volume and intensity and the meat grinder you get put through. And then I think the hybrid athlete thing is really important, right? Because our general viewpoint at Rebel is that if you're a human, you're an athlete, and I want to train you that way, right? And so for us, it always comes down to those 5 core attribute bars: strength, hypertrophy, power, endurance, movement, quality. Like at the end of the day, like I want you to have all 5 of those. They're attribute bars though, so we can figure out which ones we want to focus and prioritize. We can jack certain up and just hold others, but we're just not the team to come to if you're like, put these other 3 on 0, just put these 2 as high as we can go. That's just not really our jam or what we do. And similar to the Alex Viata thing, because remember, God, he came and gave a presentation. I don't think I was still interning at Cressy's, but he came and gave a presentation there. And I did like what he was doing, but I'm pretty similar to you in the sense that I don't really have any interest in training like to the very far extremes of just be as strong as possible in 3 lifts and then go run marathons. Like I can totally respect and appreciate that. I think it's super impressive, the people that do it. But it's like I really like more of an athletic feel. It's like I want to be able to lift heavy. Who doesn't want to be jacked and juicy? I still want to be able to jump. I want to be able to sprint. I want to be able to throw. And yeah, I still want to have work capacity and endurance and move well so I'm not in pain, And so that was the second thing. Third thing that's really important is the gratification bit. And it really frustrates me when I see people online who just poo-poo that. Because I think, like you mentioned, right, like it's a long-term game. Just like shut your mouth and just slam your face against this brick wall for the next 6 months, and maybe you'll see a PR. Otherwise, you're just soft and you're a coward and blah 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 blah. And it's just so dumb, right? Like that's not part of being a human. The percentage of the population that is capable of doing that is so small. The vast majority of people, myself included, like I want to see tangible progress every 4 to 6 weeks. If I'm not seeing objective, tangible progress every 4 to 6 weeks, I start to lose interest pretty quickly. And so that's where, and we talk about this all the time, so we don't want to really dive into that here as much. Like the gamification process of programming is so outrageously important so that the athlete gets buy-in, so they experience results really fast, and so they have fun. Because at the end of the day, that matters. A very, very big deal.
100%. Oh, man, just wins, like constant wins. Like people feel good when they're winning. It's literally as simple as that. Like I think it's past that, like the sort of stay hard sort of thing. Like it just, I don't know. It is definitely like that grind set culture now. Like it's just the way it is. Like grind hard, baby. Like 10 years, you'll fucking reap the rewards. But I don't know. That just doesn't work like that. I don't think, especially from like a strength coach and client retention standpoint. Like I don't think it's. I look at it from me. Like at the end of the day, yeah, I'm a strength coach, but I'm a client to you guys. But as a coach when a client is sort of like just drifting. Like when I don't know. I've seen it before with clients, and like this guy needs some sort of purpose because you see everything. The check-in quality goes down. When they check in, you can tell they're flat from the way they write, or even send an audio message. Like they just don't care as much. Training, like it's coasting, but there's no sort of urgency. Like there's no drive to want to take it to the next level. And yeah, I just think, and that's the majority of people. So to fit everyone in this thing, it's like, man, just stick with me for 10 years, bro. Just trust me. It's like, no, why the fuck would I do that? Like I'm paying you now. Like, cause that's at the end of the day, like, man, you're paying someone for a service. Like you're probably going to want to see results in one way or another. Yeah, you're not going to pack on 10 kilos of lean body mass, but it's the beauty of strength. Like you can make some pretty cool gains in movements, especially if it's something novel, fairly quick. So yeah, I think it's a weird attitude in strength coaching to have, but I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, like client retention is number one more than anything else. So if you can make your clients happy, obviously within reason. Like I feel like because I write about this sometimes on my Instagram or whatever else, and it's like, no, I'm not saying like just please your clients like in a way that is just to make them happy and introduce novelty for the sake of it. Like I'm not saying that at all. Like at all. Like it's not that. Like it really fucking isn't that. But in saying that, someone that's sort of happy and doing things they enjoy are going to train harder. They train harder, they're probably going to have better results.
Yeah, dude. Like I've got a guy with me right now. We're on week 6 or 7, and he's PRing every week. Like essentially, it's a really fun 12-week program that we put together for him. And so we tested in some 5-rep maxes in addition to a bunch of other more like power endurance things, right? And then we're using kind of like an EDM style auto regulation protocol with them. And it's such a fun one to watch because we're in week 6, maybe 7 right now, and he's already above his 5-rep max test in, and he's doing it for more reps. So literally every time this dude steps in the gym, he PRs. And it's like, he's having a fantastic time. He's loving life. He's like, this is fantastic. He's like, this is so much fun for me, right? So that sort of progress is doable. And then you can also chunk training down and show people those wins. I think Ryan, we've talked about this before. Ryan does a really good job with this, where he'll have you, take the heaviest load you used in say week 2 of a 4-week microcycle and then AMRAP it. And even like just those little nuggets are great because you're like, well, on week 2, I knew how heavy this was for 8 and I just did it for 12. I got better, right? And being able to bleed those things into the program, I think, are so hugely important. Which kind of transitions us. I would love to know, having worked with both me and Ryan, and then being a strength coach yourself and having worked with other coaches, and I think you talking about yourself in your early 20s was literally describing my life. I think I changed, like from my time I was 22 till the time I was probably 20, like 24, 25. I changed stuff like every probably 2 to 3 weeks. I just tried everything under the sun. Not great for my progress as an athlete, but it did help me become a better coach. I'd be curious to know, what are some of the big rock things we've done with you in programming that are different than what you've seen in other programs you've done that you really liked, that you've kind of maybe taken for yourself and started to use with your own clients? Or I'm really just kind of looking for those differentiating factors so people listening can maybe try to pull some of those things out for themselves.
Yeah. I think probably the first one that comes to mind is definitely the use of frequent AMRAPs. So we sort of, I'm just going to use, my previous programming as an example, and then how it's changed, because I think that's probably going to indicate a bit more. We're big proponents of the use of RPE and auto-regulation, like massive. Like Mike Tuchscherer is like our god. The gym I'm at is very power. Like the other boys are very powerlifting focused, and they were coached by like Bryce Krawczyk, Brett Gibbs, guys that were under Mike Tuchscherer, like very, very RPE focused. Now, the biggest issue, obviously, with RPE is someone's, need or want, not even need or want, just their inability to gauge intensity the way they should, really. Like everyone's a chronic undershooter in one way or another. Yeah, you get your random overshooter here and there that just decides to send their SBD more than often. Usually it's accessories that get undershot. And it's almost like you look at it from a coaching standpoint, but how do you tell someone you think they're not training hard enough without pissing them off? And it's probably an AMRAP. Like that's probably the way to do it. But you can't do that all the time. And you can't just fucking throw them randomly. And that's where I really like, with Ryan, I had AMRAP weeks, and I'm pretty sure with you, it was a while ago now, but you would get me to do an AMRAP. It wasn't weekly. It definitely wasn't weekly.
I do it about every 4 weeks. It usually is like my flow is kind of like you have about 4 weeks, and then week 4 or week 5, it kind of depends on the feedback from the athlete. Like, do we have more room to go here, or are we kind of like tapping out of this cycle? I like to throw that week 4, week 5. Sometimes it gets to a week 6, but that's pretty rare. That just becomes a peak week, right? And that's where it's like, okay, cool, AMRAP time. Here we go.
And I think obviously it's great to see progress, but I really like it for just calibration of intensity gauge. Like I think it's great. And then from there, and it's like it's that whole argument, like prescribed loads or RPE. And it's like, no, it's both. Like, I think, as always with fitness, it's somewhere in the middle ground. I think it's fantastic. Like not only are you quantifying progress straight off the bat in a short-term period, so fantastic, you're calibrating intensity, and then you're not wasting any fucking time when you go from the next block or from the current block to the next block in week 1. You know what I mean? Like you've got a number to shoot for. It's not, all right, well, I've got this movement, so I'll do a few warm-up sets, which takes fucking ages to try and figure out, how was my RP on that? Was it okay? No, let's maybe go up a little bit heavier. And it's that whole dance. It's like, no, block one, you only need to do that once. Block one, and then the other time would be when you get a completely new movement. It's like, well, now you've gone from block one to block two, and you know exactly what you're doing. So that would probably be my biggest thing, and it's just a cool way of deloading. Everyone just deloads. Like a lot of the time, it's just the most common I see is just an intensity deload for a lot of people. Like drop the RPE down hard. But I feel the issue with that going from one block into the next is, it's just that confidence of dealing with heavy weight. So that you go into the next block and it takes a few weeks to get that confidence under heavy weight again. Whereas keeping intensity high and deloading volume, I've found not only do I feel fresher going into the week one of the next block, but the confidence to keep moving that heavy weight is still there. So there's that big, I don't know, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of doing AMRAPs. People are like, oh, don't you think that's going to fuck someone? Like physically? No. Like, pick your crowd. And then you guys are dealing with obviously people that lift well, you know what I mean? Yeah. At no point have I felt unsafe doing an AMRAP. Like it's never felt like, it's never been a concern for me. You know what I mean? It's been fine. So I would say that's definitely, I would say the biggest thing that I've implemented and used quite frequently with my own clients. And just the reports I get from everyone are fantastic. So that's probably the biggest thing. In terms of just like feeling good and in terms of like exercise execution, just the influence of position. Like I was doing that with my own clients prior to getting coached by you guys, but just in terms of not everything has to be pure output, because that's what cooks people. And it's like you can still drive output with some of these movements, like a split squat with a hip shift, but you're probably looking for some different things. You know what I mean? Not everything has to be extension heavy dumbbell pressing with full scap retraction and chest in the sky sort of thing. And just using that position across everything, you're probably going to have better, I say probably because we've copped it for using the stat for some reason. That's like, you're probably going to have better outcomes from a stimulus. Like it's a whole Mike Israel thing, like stimulus to fatigue ratio. Like fatigue, probably a little bit less fatigue by not driving output from accessory musculature as much, and then just really trying to have that targeted stimulus, just by way of better position, length tension relationships. Like it's just like that's probably it. And it's people like, oh well, it just squat where we're trying to build better pressure. Probably do it for your cable flies and your presses, man. You'll probably still feel better. You know what I mean? So that would be up there as well with how it's influenced my programming. Like it's not just squat and deadlift where we're trying to brace better.
Yeah. I think the way that you set up and execute every movement all feeds into itself, right? Like there's never a point in time where we're not thinking about how do we do a better job setting up and executing this exercise. And I think one of the things you mentioned is really important that we have mentioned on here before is I think part of the reason that we're really successful with these AMRAP sets is because of the fact that we're really smart with how we do our exercise selection for the accessories, right? It's like, I'm not going to AMRAP you on a squat, bench, deadlift, something huge, and then go torch you with all this big bilateral stuff afterwards, right? There's a song and dance here. It's like, we're trying to be a sniper. We pick our spots, and then, okay, like if you just got smoked by an AMRAP on a big output movement, then we know that we're probably not going to be able to get as much out of accessories. So like, I always really like that split in training of you have to have your output movements. They have to be there. I hate when people pull those things out because then you just get soft and unathletic and nobody likes that, right? But you don't need to have output movement, output movement, output movement, output movement in a training day to make progress. Pick your spots, right? 2 big output movements maybe, and then we can go into some accessory stuff that's maybe more unilateral, more position-based, and it's going to be inherently load-capped that way. And I always think of it as, I just think that creates such a nice flywheel effect where these two things really feed into each other so nicely. It's like just from a stress and a fatigue management standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But then when we have these accessory exercises that get you moving better, feeling better, managing position better, that just allows you to get more out of your big lifts, right? And we just get this really nice feedback that takes place to where every week we're getting more and more out of that big lift. And the big lift is the thing that's going to drive the most adaptation for the most people anyways.
It's all under I don't know, I think it's all under the lens of like good programming is all through the lens of fatigue management. Like I know we look at the gym I'm at, Strength Culture. Like Jamie Smith is the guy that I work under. He's the guy that started the gym. He thinks everything comes down to three principles. It's like specificity, fatigue management, and phase potentiation. Like really. So I think from an exercise selection standpoint, it's literally fatigue management. Like how are we getting the most out of our athletes by way of setting up a session, setting up a training week, and setting up a training block. And I think exercise selection is definitely a big part in that. Like you can't just bilateral extension heavy every single movement. You know what I mean? Like that is fantastic for moving big weights and squat, bench, and deadlift. But like I think that subjective experience is a big thing as well. So if by the fourth or fifth exercise you feel fucking trashed, like your output's going to drop off. So the stimulus is going to drop off. So that is, to me, I think is inefficient, or I wouldn't say it's junk, but it's leaning towards junk volume. You know what I mean? So if you're improving the quality in the back end of your sessions, it's better. They're harder sets, they're better sets, it's more progress, really. Like without going to fucking absolutist, but I definitely think it definitely is. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's where I'm at on that. So I agree big time.
Yeah, it's like we're not really getting much better if there's not quality there. You know, that's where I think that a lot of times there is an argument to be made for inverting sets and reps. So we're getting the same amount of total volume in the same amount of time, but the quality of each of those reps is significantly higher. That's where I think those auto-regulation protocols and tactics make a lot of sense, because we are getting the most quality, the most bang for our buck on any given day based off of where that person's at walking in the gym, right? And just super quick primer on the auto-regulation stuff. In my mind, when I write these, right, like there are a handful of variables when I'm programming for a big movement: sets, reps, load, and rest time. Like those are kind of the big four, right? Like you could throw tempos in there if you want to. We'll leave that out. If we just think of those big four, rest time, I will probably never question mark, but I will question mark one of the other three usually in a program. I'm going to question mark your sets, I'm going to question mark your reps, or I'm going to question mark the load. And I can manipulate those three things in a lot of different ways. But as a coach, it just makes so much more sense to me because I know that I'm getting the most out of that athlete on that day. You know, I think this is not to say that linear periodization and percentage schemes don't work. They 1000% do. They 100% work. But I just think for most human beings that are not professional athletes, where their entire life revolves around just eating, sleeping, and training, right? Where we have all these other real life things to concern ourselves with, jobs and relationships and maybe a family and kids and all this other stuff. Like, it's kind of outrageous for me to sit down and try to chart out this beautiful percentage wave for 12 to 16 weeks and be like, well, by the time you get to week 10, this is where we're going to be on this percentage wave and you should be feeling really good. Meanwhile, it's like maybe on week 7 or 8, they've gotten a huge argument with their spouse, or things get really stressful at work, and all of a sudden, like, things just start going to shit. You know, it's just the percentage thing. I think it can definitely work. I'm not gonna say it doesn't work. It just doesn't seem like the best strategy to use to give people the biggest likelihood of success. Because then, like, we have to start reworking things. We got to think about how do we want to change this. Blah 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 blah. I mean, granted, I still do use percentages, but I think of them in much shorter time periods than like a 12 to 16 week percentage wave, just because I've had too many people that get 6 weeks in and then we're having to throw it out because of life stuff, which is totally reasonable.
I don't know. I feel like there's a few. Like I'm not a big evidence guy, like evidence based guy. To be honest with you, like I don't know. I just a few people that left a fucking bad taste in my mouth, just calling myself evidence based. But there's a few papers out there. I like narrative reviews and shit. I don't think they're solid, but there's John Keeley. Like he breaks it down, like how periodization is sort of dead. You know what I mean? Just by way of understanding stress. Like it just I don't know. I just think it's sort of done. Like it just doesn't make sense from a percentage standpoint. What we know about stress, how people respond, how it's not just physical, it doesn't make sense for it to be a 12 to 16 week mapped out program. It's like, who is it? It's, so that top down, whereas like auto regulation is bottom up. And I think Mladen Jovanovic, he is like, this guy's a fucking, his mind I think is too good for strength and conditioning. But the way that he does it, it's like, no, it's fucking not either, dickheads. Like, it's both. Like, there's this intertwine. Like, you understand, like, yeah, right, this phase leads into the next phase and this phase. And if there's athletic competition, like, obviously, you know, that's punctuated by different points in the training year. But shit happens. So that's where the bottom up comes in. If an athlete is training 3 times a week, sports training, or you've got your athlete that's just lifting, but life happens, you're probably going to see in like a merging of both top down and bottom up. Like, it's not one or the other. But more often than not, life happens a lot. So shit happens, and that's why I think water regulation is the fucking way.
I like it, man. We should wrap on that. I think that's a good way to wrap this. That, and by the way, I think that we also, if this has to exist, I gotta Google this when we wrap up here. Like, somebody has had to have made a Jacked and Juicy t-shirt. If that doesn't exist, that needs to happen immediately. I'm just gonna type this into the Google here real quick and see what comes up. Okay, the first thing that comes up: when you're jacked and juicy, the hoes get loosey. Lol, that's so good. Oh man. Oh, dude, I found a jacked and juicy pre-workout. Okay, we're clearly not the first to really stumble upon this idea. Robert Frank here. Yeah, when you're jacked and juicy, he has a t-shirt. Okay. Good to see people are out in front on this.
He's massive. He's just juiced to the gills. He's like red all the time, beard. He like rhymes about chest day and shit like that. People have sent me some of his videos. He's insane. He's insane.
Oh my god, dude. Well, Jamie, man, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody listening, I hope that you were able to pull some nuggets and things that you can go and take and try and use in your own training. And then, Jimmy, where can people go to find you, to find Melbourne Strength Culture? Because you guys have so much good stuff going on out there in Australia.
Yeah. So just my Instagram is just Jamie Bouz, B-O-U-Z. And then the gym that I work at is Melbourne Strength Culture. We just hammer content at the moment. It's less like pure fitness content anymore. Like, we used to do that quite a bit, but now it's more just training's fun, life should be fun, and I think that a solid gym and a solid coach should probably reflect that. So that's where we're at now. So if you want to have a look at things that aren't your typical fitness content, then maybe suss that out.
Awesome. I love it. And we will throw all of that into the show notes for you guys and gals. Thank you to always for tuning in, peeps, and hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. All right. Talk soon.